Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 598 of the Handgun World podcast. This is a practical show done by a practical guy. That is me. Thanks for tuning in, folks. I know that there are a lot of podcasts out there. There are a lot of YouTube channels out there that you can watch, that you can listen to. You're spending your time with me. I thank you very much, and I'm going to do the best job I can to create some value for your time. So, have infringements gone too far on the Second Amendment? As you know, it says, shall not be infringed in the Second Amendment. Have they gone too far? In this video and in this podcast, I am going to talk about this. The first 15 minutes of this episode is on YouTube. You can watch that. And I just wanted to mention that this show is sponsored by Keepers Concealment, the leading authority in appendix carry holsters. Check them out if you need appendix carry gear. It's probably the most popular way to carry a handgun right now in the appendix carry position. That means that while you're carrying it, it basically sits right in front of your appendix. Some people would call that about 2 o'clock on the scale there. So check them out, keepersconcealment.com. I've taken classes with Spencer Keepers. He's a great trainer as well, and you can find out about it. You get a 10% discount just by using the coupon code HandgunWorld at checkout. One word, HandgunWorld. That gives you a 10% discount, and they're also members of, or they're affiliates of CCW Safe, and there'll be a discount code in the show notes below this video and below the audio podcast for you to use to get a discount on legal protection, which, the way things are going today, I think legal protection is a very good idea. So did shall not infringed go too far? I think it did. So the purpose of this episode is to explain why I think it went too far. As you know, the Supreme Court, they handed down 2 huge decisions last week. They handed down their decision on the handgun concealed carry case that was brought before them. And then, of course, the following day, they gave us the shocking and riveting decision about Roe versus Wade, which I want to talk a little bit about that. But I have another channel called Real Talk with Bob, and I'd like you to go over and subscribe to Real Talk with Bob. I'll put a link to the video, and check out my most recent opinion about the Supreme Court decision on Roe versus Wade. I bet you that what I talk about is something that you really haven't heard a lot of other people talk about. You know, a lot of people are losing their minds. People's heads are exploding. The people who are for abortions out there, and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe what's happening. You know, we're going to have a tragic situation in the United States. I don't think we're going to have a tragic situation. Again, I'm not going to take up this time, but please check out the link in the bottom of this video, because I am going to be linking to that episode, and you can hear my opinions on that. Did infringement go too far? In New York, the Supreme Court said, yeah, the infringement upon a person's Second Amendment rights went too far. And they struck down the whole clause where the state of New York made you prove that you had a need to carry a gun. You had to prove to the government that you had a need to carry a gun, and that's not the way that it's supposed to work. You've got a Second Amendment right. That's what the keep and bear. Bear means you can carry that on your person. That's what that's all about. So the Supreme Court and Clarence Thomas basically wrote in the majority opinion that that's too much of a burden, way too much of a burden. That in all the other states out there that are called shall issue states, as long as you meet a certain requirement, and that is taking a class and a background check, that New York should basically be like those states. And all the others, there's like 6 states in the country that have those onerous restrictions. And then, of course, where I am in Texas, we are now a constitutional carry state. So as long as you are not a convicted felon and 21 years of age, you can carry a handgun and you don't need to ask the government for permission to carry your gun, to exercise your Second Amendment rights. There aren't very many rights where you have to ask permission to exercise your right. And even when you do have to ask permission, it's not a highly regulated and onerous, burdensome restriction. I had one person on Facebook say to me, well, you know, you have to ask permission to drive a car, you have to get a license, and you have to ask permission from your government to vote because it means that you have to get registered. I don't think that those comparisons are the same as what New York was doing. You know, I don't have to prove that I have a need to vote. Okay, I got a right to vote. I don't have to prove that I need to do that. You know, in some states you don't have to have an ID to vote. That's a whole nother controversial subject. But in Texas, where I live, you have to have an ID. But as long as I got an ID, I don't have to prove to the government, hey, I have a need to vote. But that's what New York was doing. New York was making their citizens prove that they have a need to carry a gun. All right, so the Supreme Court struck that down. We know that. Here's some things I want to share with you, and I will link to this article. New York is not going to stand for the Supreme Court's decision. At least they're going to try to defy it. One of the challenges that we have in our system of government here in America, one of the weak parts, I think, of the Constitution is that it doesn't set up anything for enforcement. So what I mean by that is states could just ignore the Supreme Court's decision. They could just ignore it and say, you know what? Forget what you did, Supreme Court. We don't care. Even though if it was a 6-3 decision that you made, we don't care. We're going to do our own thing. What's to stop the state of New York from doing that? What is to stop the elected officials from doing that? And New York is already saying that. Mayor Adams, we are prepared to set an example and we will lead the country as to how to fight back on this decision. Okay? The governor Hochul, I think, is that how she pronounces her name? We have a whole lot of ideas, the governor said. Plans are already underway to counter-effect the ruling. The governor is reportedly considering calling a special Democrat-led session of the legislature to show support for Mayor Adams. And she says, we cannot allow New York to become the Wild West. Well, you know, I got news for the governor of New York. It's not going to become the Wild West. In the other 40-something states, it hasn't become the Wild West. People said, oh my God, when Texas approved constitutional carry, it's going to be shootout in Texas just like in the movies. It's not. Okay? New York is not going to become the Wild West. But here's what the leaders in New York are saying. The city council is looking for a workaround after the Supreme Court's decision, reportedly looking at ways to add to the city's sensitive locations. And the Supreme Court decision pretty much kind of left it open for them to use the sensitive locations clause, or let them at least declare places to be sensitive locations. So Albany, the capital of New York, the legislature wants to try to ban guns from government buildings, schools, hospitals, places of worship, parks, daycare centers, cemeteries, and a lot of other facilities, and establish a 1,000-foot buffer around those sensitive places, saying you can't carry a gun in that 1,000-foot area. So they're going to play this game, see, and they're going to defy it. And that's the problem. The Supreme Court can decide whatever they want, but who's going to stop states from defying the Supreme Court? I think the same thing's going to happen with the Roe versus Wade decision. The Supreme Court let it be up to the states. And I'll put this a little bit in my other video, but I'm going to talk about it. they didn't really abolish abortion. A lot of people are saying that. All they did was leave it up to the states to decide what they want to do. Who's going to stop a state from defying the Supreme Court? Same with handguns. Who is going to make that decision to stop them? You know what? Nobody. And New York is going to make it as absolutely difficult to carry a gun as they possibly can. And they are going to pretty much render the concealed handgun licenses of New York residents, they're going to render them useless. I like what the Supreme Court did. I like their decision. I'm the biggest, one of the biggest Second Amendment advocates you're ever going to talk to or listen to. I'm also a realist. The Second Amendment community, we lost some ground with what the Senate did and the recent gun control that the Senate passed. And by the way, the 15 or 16 senators that voted for that, they all should lose their jobs. Go out and vote. Unfortunately, I really think that states like New York, and they are saying that they're going to lead the way on how to defy the Supreme Court. They want to defy the United States Supreme Court. My question is, why do we have the Supreme Court if their decisions are not going to be enforced? It's their job to decide the constitutionality of the laws made by the legislature. In this case, they said it was not constitutional for New York to put such a huge onerous restriction on getting a handgun carry license. Okay, so they decided that. Great, we like that, right? Us Second Amendment advocates, yeah, we're saying victory. Be careful. I think it's a victory, but if the state of New York, like I'm reading here in this article, and I will link to it, and I've heard them on the news, if the state legislatures and leaders are going to come up with everything they can to defy the Supreme Court decision, and if they're successful in doing that, what kind of a victory did we really get? So if you live in the state of New York, here in America, I think it's time now for you to get very vocal with your leaders, your mayors, your state reps, your state senators, your governor. Make them pay a political price. That's the only thing that's going to enforce what the Supreme Court just did and just decided, is that they have to pay a political price. If they don't pay that political price, the Supreme Court's decision doesn't really mean much, does it? Because who's going to enforce it? The district attorney? You really think that a liberal anti-gun DA or attorney general, if they're liberal in these states, are going to really enforce the Supreme Court's decision? You really think they're going to do that? See, no one's paying consequences for ignoring decisions like this. I think it's time, and I'd like to hear your comments. What kind of consequences should be paid? Do you think that the state of New York and other states like this that are going to defy the Supreme Court order, do you think that they should pay a consequence? I do. But what is it? Give me some comments in the comment section. I'd like to hear what you have to say. For those of you listening to this audio podcast, you can leave a voicemail, 210-646-1727. You can email me, handgunworld@gmail.com. That's handgunworld@gmail.com. What do you think? I think these decisions are really only as good as the people who are willing to enforce it, and what kind of a price are they going to pay. I also want to remind you this episode is also sponsored by Concealment Solutions, and they make some fantastic holsters. As a matter of fact, for this video, I'll just go ahead and I'll show you. This is my SIG 365 XL, and this is a Concealment Solutions outside the waistband holster. I can conceal this extremely well, and I'm carrying outside the waistband, which is more comfortable and faster and everything by using one of their holsters. So check them out. There'll be a link in the show notes. And the same discount code, Handgun World, gets you a 10% discount at concealmentsolutions.com. What do you think? Are states going to be able to get away with defying the Supreme Court's excellent decision on the New York concealed handgun case? For those of you watching on video, thank you for watching. If you want to hear the rest of this episode, in the show notes, there'll also be a link to my audio podcast. Thanks for watching.